Hello and good afternoon to all of you. I must especially thank the organizers, React Asia Pacific, and my dear colleague, Dr. Philip Matthew, for having invited me, or rather given me this opportunity to share my thoughts on infection prevention and personal protective equipment, especially in the background of the COVID 19 pandemic. Now, when we think of the pandemic, one question that always comes to our mind is this is an unprecedented situation. Well, there are no doubts about it. But if we just spend some time or spare a thought to think if this was really an unprecedented situation, you will realize that even without looking at our history textbooks or the legacy of the pandemics that the world has witnessed, that from 2009 onwards, there have been similar outbreaks happening across the world. Now, if you take the case of 2009, we have the H1N1 pandemic. Then in 2010, we had a dengue outbreak. 2012, we had the MERS or the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome outbreak caused by a member of the coronavirus. In 2015, we had Zika. In 2018 to 19, we all know that India had an outbreak of Nipah virus. And as we are talking about COVID-19 pandemic, we must also remember that at the beginning of this pandemic, there were two outbreaks, one of Casinor forest disease and the other of avian influenza reported in Kerala as the COVID-19 pandemic started. So, come to think of it, this is not an unprecedented situation, but we are all concerned, and rightly so, that because it personally affects you. Had it not affected you personally, we wouldn't have been really bothered about this episode, and we would rather dismiss it as a freak outbreak or an incident. Okay, having said that, we should also recount a fact that there are certain pandemics for which we have both a cure and a vaccine. Okay, there are certain pandemics like our H1N1 for which we have a definitive cure, but the vaccine is not that effective because it mainly comprises of the seasonal influenza strains. And suddenly, if we are hit by a new strain of the avian flu, for example, which is not incorporated in the vaccine, and then we are gone for a toss. Now, there are certain outbreaks like Nipah and coronaviruses for which no definitive treatment strategies or no definitive vaccination protocols have been yet established. So, in that context, we have to view the infection prevention strategies as a life-saving tool more than anything else. Now, for any pandemic to develop, we need three components: agent, the host, and the environment. If you look at the present scenario, the environment is very much conducible for the development or for the establishment of the agent by factors such as climate change, air and sound pollution, okay, tobacco, alcohol consumption, obesity, insufficient physical activity, unhealthy diets, presence of hypertensives, and more of cancer associated infections. If you look at the host, the WHO has recently raised a concern that there are more number of individuals who are dying out of non-communicable diseases like your stroke, heart diseases, and diabetes mellitus, when compared to that of communicable diseases. And in its 2010 report, if I am not mistaken, about 80% of the deaths have been noted among the low and middle income countries to be due to the non-communicable diseases. So, for the emergence of any new infection, be it a sporadic event, epidemic, endemic, outbreak, or pandemic, whatever you call it, any agent finds it very easy to establish itself in such a setting where both the environment and the host factors are conducible. And this is exactly what has happened with COVID-19. So against this backdrop, I would like to now bring your attention to two very important facts. Now, why this COVID-19 is such a pandemic, or why has it caused such a havoc? And if you see all over the country or all over the world, people are talking about breaking the chain. And what exactly do we mean by breaking the chain? Now, breaking the chain involves several components. You need an agent first. Comparing it with the current pandemic, the agent here would be the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Now the agent has to get established in a reservoir, and the reservoir for COVID-19 as of now is thought to be bats or civets or pangolins. Well, it's again very inconclusive, but one thing is definitely sure, that humans are definitely the reservoir of spread of this infection. So for all practical purposes, and as it is established by the prevalent situation worldwide, let us consider humans as the reservoir. Now once the agent enters the reservoir, it has to exit the reservoir. And as far as humans are concerned, this virus has exited through the respiratory droplets as the patient or the person or the infected individual cough, sneeze, or talks. Now, from the infected reservoir, from these respiratory droplets, this virus has spread through two modes. Please remember, the most common mode of COVID-19 spread is by contact, and the highest risk of transmission is the droplets. Here you need to understand that there is a subtle difference between a droplet transmission and an airborne transmission. Now for droplet transmission to occur, the infected individual needs to be within 1 meter distance of the exposed individual. Whereas for the airborne transmission to occur, the infected individual need not necessarily be in the front or in front of the suspected or the exposed person. I will give you a simple analogy of influenza and tuberculosis. Now your H1N1 influenza spreads through droplets. So here the viruses are situated in droplets of greater than 0.5 micrometers in diameter, which helps it to successfully lodge itself in the airways. So these droplets being larger in size, so if there is an influenza H1N1 positive patient right in front of me, and if he talks to me within 1 meter distance, I can easily get infected. But if you take the case of a tuberculosis, which is a much more sinister condition, if a patient of tuberculosis just coughs or sneezes in this room and leaves this room, and if I enter this room, I can get infected even if that patient is not present in the room. Now this is the difference between airborne and droplet transmission. And airborne transmission basically occurs because of the lesser particle size, less than 0.5 microns. Now, having established a mode of transmission, it preferentially affects susceptible host. Now, for COVID 19, we all know the susceptible host are the elderly people who are diabetic or who are having cardiovascular problems. And from these susceptible individuals, this infection spreads through surfaces, what we usually call as the most frequently touched or the high touch surfaces, to the susceptible or exposed person. Interestingly, if you look at the statistics, more number of younger people are getting infected with COVID-19 than the older people, and the risk of mortality is the highest in the elderly people with diabetes and cardiovascular infections. Now, what are the reasons for the rampant spread of COVID-19 apart from the fact that we don't have an established cure or a vaccine? It's very simple. In my opinion, I would say there are two reasons. The first reason is people are not following the instructions. The second reason is people are not properly, within inverted quotes, following the instructions. Please remember, there is a world of difference between these two statements. When I say not following the instructions, I mean that you might have noticed, thanks to the media reportage, that large people of individuals gathered in public places or in certain mass gatherings. So here the people have clearly violated the norm of social distancing, which is of primemost importance to prevent COVID-19. When I say people are not following the instructions properly, I mean that even though they adhere to the norms, they are not implementing it in the true sense of the word. Like we might have already seen so many people roaming around our localities with masks on. Now, if you actually carefully look at these individuals who are wearing these masks, you will notice that not all of them are wearing the mask in the proper way. Some of them, their masks are dangling in the front of the neck. Some of them adjust. Some of them touch the outside and the interior part of the mask. Some of them keep pulling up and keep pulling the mask down. So all sorts of manipulations they do with their hands to the mask, which is already infected. And even if they practice hand hygiene, the masks will definitely help to spread the COVID-19. Okay, so the primemost infection control strategies here are three in number. The first thing is social distancing. Number two, we have hand hygiene. In fact, I should say hand hygiene is the number one strategy, followed by social distancing and respiratory etiquette and mask usage. So I will be dealing with all of them. Now, hand hygiene, you will be surprised to know that Ignaz Semmelweis, who discovered hand hygiene, had to be shifted to a mental asylum because he was trying to convince people of his community, his healthcare community, on the importance of the hand hygiene. He lost his life in the mental asylum due to depression. WHO has brought out a staggering 272-page PDF document just on hand hygiene, and this itself, my friends, is enough for me to substantiate with more proof and evidence the importance of this very simple and very elementary method, which each one of us can do at our own personal levels. Now, I generally take a lot of hand hygiene sessions during the orientation classes for my healthcare workers, and one question that I'm always confronted with is, how do we prioritize hand hygiene? Okay, it's very difficult for us to do hand hygiene, follow the hand hygiene during all the 5 moments, that is before touching a patient, after touching a patient, before clean and aseptic procedure, after the procedure, okay, and after touching patient surroundings. Very difficult to follow this procedure. Most of them tell me that. But now COVID-19 has proven that it is not about the practicality, but it is about priority that is more important. So all of my friends who were opposing the practical aspects of hand hygiene are themselves now washing their hands during all these 5 WHO moments during this COVID-19 pandemic. So it is doable. It takes only 20 to 30 seconds if you are using an alcohol hand rub, or up to 40 seconds if you are using soap and water. So it is doable. All that we need to do is just to follow it. And this is the best way to keep our hands safe from COVID-19. And when I say hand hygiene, again, please remember that all of you should implement all the steps of hand hygiene. Briefly, you have to take the hand wash solution in the palm of your hand, okay, and rub the solution palm to palm, right hand over the left dorsum, left hand over the right dorsum, palm to palm fingers interlaced. Then you have palm to palm fingers, hand to hand fingers interlocked, okay. Then most importantly, which most of us forget, rotational rubbing of the thumb on both the sides, okay, and then clasping of the fingers of the opposite hand and making a circle on the palm of the other hand, okay. So it must be done on both these sides. So out of all the steps of hand hygiene, most of the workers do not do this rotational rubbing and this clasping, and also this rubbing the underside of the fingers. Why I'm stressing these 3 steps is because, my friends, these are the 3 areas which are most frequently missed when performing hand hygiene. So as I told you that this virus basically spreads through respiratory droplets, that to those which are greater than 0.5 microns in size. These heavier droplets usually fall off easily at a distance of about 6 feet or roughly 1 meter. And that is why all the agencies, both governmental and non-governmental, emphasize on social distancing. Because if you maintain a distance of greater than 1 meter, this respiratory droplets which are generated accidentally from a suspected individual will fall off on the ground without infecting the other patients or the other individuals who are standing in the vicinity of the patient. This is precisely why we have a distance of 1 meter between the 2 hospital beds. Now, the third most important component, and which is the most crucial component, is wearing of the appropriate personal protective equipment. Now, for the healthcare workers, let me tell you that while donning the personal protective equipment, the general dictum that is followed is apron, mask, goggles, okay, and gloves. Okay, apron, mask, goggles, and gloves. You may wear the shoe cover and the head cap prior to wearing the apron. And while doffing, I generally remember it as 3GM, that is gloves, gowns, goggles, and then followed by mask. Now, as far as COVID-19 pandemic is concerned, there are certain variations to this general routine, because here we are using an overall along with the shoe cover and the head cover. So under these circumstances, the WHO proposes the use of 2 pairs of gloves. What we generally follow in our hospital is we generally change the plastic apron and the outer pair of gloves between every patient's. And when we don off both the pairs of the gloves, because during the frequent exchange of gloves between the patients and performance of hand hygiene, there is a likelihood of contamination of your inner gloves. So therefore we doff both the gloves and then we take off the mask and the goggles, strictly adhering to all the meticulous hand hygiene steps. Now, one thing I would like to focus here is the use of mask. Masks have run in short supply, and this particular piece of information regarding mask is especially vital in the background of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, if you look at the mask, there are basically three types of masks. One mask, which is your homemade or your cloth mask, also called as DIY or do-it-yourself mask. Okay. The second type of mask is your 3-ply surgical mask, and the third type of mask is your N95 mask. My dear friends, please remember that out of these three types of mask, for the common public, for the community, never ever wear the N95 mask. Let N95 mask exclusively be the priority of the healthcare worker, because the healthcare worker is exposed to various droplets while performing certain set of procedures called as aerosol generating procedures like intubation, suctioning, etc. And these micro droplets are effectively filtered by the N95 mask more than anything else. So my dear friends, the N95 mask is an exclusive property of the healthcare workers and the healthcare workers alone and nobody else. As far as the surgical mask is concerned, definitely a 3-ply surgical mask can be worn by the public, and also it can be worn by the healthcare workers who are taking care of COVID-19 patients or those patients with respiratory symptoms in areas which do not require an aerosol generating procedure to be performed. Cloth mask is the most preferred personal protective equipment for the public. Now, if you look at the efficacy of all these three masks, the highest or the top order is definitely the N95 mask. Then next comes your 3-ply surgical mask, and next your cloth mask. Please remember that the public should not be over dependent on the usage of masks. If you are too much dependent on the mask, the WHO position paper clearly mentions that it will create a false sense of security and it will lead you to preferentially avoid or preferentially not follow certain other basic things like social distancing and hand hygiene, which are more important in the context of COVID-19. Now, if you're wearing a cloth mask, please make sure that you launder the cloth mask appropriately in a detergent solution and reuse it after drying it in sunlight. The cloth mask should be worn only when you're venturing out into a crowded public area where you are expected to mingle with a lot of people in close proximity, and also when you're going to closed spaces with air condition. So please use cloth mask for these situations only. Now, can we reuse a surge, or how effective is a cloth mask? They say a cloth mask is either as effective as a surgical mask or worse than a surgical mask, but it can never be better than a surgical mask. And for the general public, for the community in general, cloth mask is advisable along with following of other precautions like hand hygiene and social distancing. As far as surgical mask is concerned, please remember, surgical mask has to be worn properly. If you are a male, Then look at me, I am the greatest contraindication of wearing a mask. You can never wear a mask on a bearded face. Please remember, don't wear a mask on a bearded face. However, we are under lockdown and I don't have that much of an opportunity to interact with people. Therefore, I'm taking the liberty of maintaining my social distancing, following hand hygiene, rather than wearing a mask. I'm reasonably comfortable. By God's grace, I'm safe today. But one thing you understand, that once this lockdown ends and once we are venturing out into public places, we must make sure that we do not wear mask when with a bearded face. So please don't wear mask with a bearded face. Is on a bearded face for males is my first simple suggestion. Now, surgical masks should be used only for a period between 4 to 6 hours, and N95 mask should be used for a period between 4 to 8 hours. So it's very easy. You can change the mask for each shift. Before lunch, one mask. After lunch, another mask if you are a healthcare worker. Now, there are ways to increase the usage of surgical mask by putting it through a transparency sheet, through the punched holes of a transparency sheet. You can prolong the life of a surgical mask. But please remember, again, you can use surgical mask for only up to 6 hours. You cannot reuse the surgical mask and it has to be appropriately discarded after usage. When it comes to N95 mask, and considering that there is a acute shortage of masks worldwide, there have been several studies and several very good suggestions, I should say, regarding the reusage of N95 mask. Now, first thing you should understand is, conventionally N95 mask should be used only for one patient. Now, if you want to use it for a prolonged duration, there are two strategies available. One is extended use, the second one is limited reuse. Now, when I say extended use, I mean to say that you can use the same N95 mask and attend to 10 patients and come out of the ward and discard it. I will give you a simple example. Suppose in a ward there are about 10 patients, you don all the personal protective equipment, enter the ward, use the same mask for all the 10 patients and come outside. This is called as extended use, and this is what is being generally practiced all over, considering the contingency of the N95 mask. Now, there is another option. It is called as the limited reuse. This is especially applicable if you have fewer patients with respiratory symptoms. Let's say there are only about 3 or 2 patients of suspected respiratory symptoms like influenza or SARS-CoV-2. What you can do is attend to those patients, and let's say I told you we can use your N95 mask for up to 8 hours, and let's say you finish attending to these patients for within a period of 1.5 to 2 hours. What you can do is you can place the N95 mask by holding by its strap as you doff, and place them in a breathable breathable paper bag. Okay, I repeat, you can place the N95 mask in a breathable paper bag, which should definitely be sterile. This is what the latest CDC guidelines tell us. You can also reuse it once the need arises. So in such a fashion, you can reuse this N95 mask for a period of up to 5 days or up to 8 hours, whichever is earlier. You can even prolong it to 7 days if your 8-hour slot is not over. And this breathable breathable paper bag should be placed in sunlight in a well ventilated area with your name written on the paper bag. Now, to prolong the life of your N95 mask, again, you can wear a surgical 3-ply surgical mask over it, or you can wear a face shield, or you can pass it through punched transparency paper holes to prolong the life of the N95 mask. Several strategies have been proposed to sterilize the N95 mask, chief among them being the use of hydrogen peroxide, moist heat, ultraviolet radiation, etc. And out of all these validated methods, the use of hydrogen peroxide seems to be promising. So plasma sterilization, or which utilizes this mechanism of employing hydrogen peroxide vapors, is the best way to sterilize the N95 mask after usage, that is after 8 hours. And such a reuse should be made for a maximum of 3 attempts. But my friends, please remember, if you are reusing an N95 mask after sterilization, please remember certain things. First thing is, you should always meticulously perform hand hygiene. Do not touch the outside or the inside part of the N95 mask. Third, always check the straps, the nose foam, and the mask material, and look for any tears or any breach in the quality of the material of the N95 mask. If you notice such a breach, please discard it then and there. And after wearing N95 mask, you should always do what is called as a fit check. What does a fit check mean? Fit check basically means that you are ensuring that there is no air leak between the face and the mask. Okay, you can do it in 2 very simple steps. You can check for positive pressure ventilation by exhaling. So wear the mask, blow out, you will notice a slight ballooning of the upper portion of the mask, which indicates that the positive pressure seal is intact. Similarly, you have to check for a negative pressure seal, where you inhale and you will notice that there is a slight depression of the N95, the outer surface of the N95 mask, and that indicates that the negative pressure seal is intact. This is all that is to the fit check. So please ensure that you do a fit check for the N95 mask. It's very, very, very important. And always discard the N95 mask even before 8 hours if there is an accidental spillage of blood or body fluids over the mask, or if you feel that lot of these droplets have got impacted following an aerosol generating procedure, or when you're taking care of a patient who's co-infected with other infectious diseases that require contact precautions. So in all these situations, you have to discard N95 mask even before the stipulated 8 hours of time. So the next very important thing that I would like to mention here is about the disinfection tunnels. Now I can see lot of media reports everywhere, especially across the northern side and some of our southern states, a few of our southern states, where technologies have been established in such a way that there is a disinfection tunnel created, where the person would pass through the tunnel inhaling the vapors of hydrogen peroxide or your sodium hypochlorite. My friends, please, please, please do not fall into this fallacy. There is no scientific evidence on the effectiveness of disinfection tunnel. In fact, hand hygiene and social distancing are much, much more efficacious than the usage of disinfection tunnel. And of course, the use of your cloth masks, especially in closed public areas or in social gatherings post lockdown period. The reason is this: sodium hypochlorite has to be freshly prepared every day. Please remember this. This compound can easily bleach your fabric or carpets. It can irritate your skin or mucosa, and it is not effective in the presence of organic matter. If you are getting soiled with some dirt or dust, it is not effective then. Hydrogen peroxide, on the other hand, is very expensive, and again, like hypochlorite, it is a skin irritant. So it is also said that if you use older prepared sodium hypochlorite solution, the efficacy of the solution loses by about 40 to 50% parts per billion of chlorine. So please, my friends, do not believe in the efficacy of a disinfection tunnel. I would rather urge you to believe on your own hands, making sure that you follow your hand hygiene, maintain social distancing, okay, and use cloth mask whenever you venture out into crowded areas or closed areas. With this small thing, I would also like to add a note of a simple practice which you should follow if you do not have a cloth mask. Let's say you feel like sneezing, please make sure that you sneeze by keeping your hand at the top of your elbow. Okay, don't directly sneeze on your bare hands. If you do so, please do hand hygiene. And it's always better to use a handkerchief and bring it to the mouth when you're sneezing if you do not have a cloth mask. Whatever I told you just now forms a basic part of a set code called as the respiratory etiquette. So I hope that all of you have understood the importance of the use of the infection control procedures or the infection prevention strategies, and also the importance of using the masks, the right type of mask for the right occasions. Now, as we are going to go post lockdown, please remember, I am just repeating whatever the experts have told. This lockdown can only flatten the curve, it cannot mitigate the virus. So COVID-19 has changed a lot of our lifestyle habits. It has shown us that we can even manage our life, or we can carry out our day-to-day life activities with the bare minimum essentials. So please continue to maintain these bare minimum essentials and continue to lead your life. Please adopt healthy lifestyle practices to control your sugar intake and to reduce your BP, so that you do not be the next susceptible host for COVID-19. Please exercise regularly, keep yourself hydrated, have a well cooked, nutritional, balanced diet. Okay, try as far as possible to restrain your outdoor activities, and if you want to go, please use the appropriate masks for the appropriate situation. We always need to ensure the social distancing. Follow hand hygiene. Okay, I think one lesson that COVID-19 has taught us is hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, social distancing, and wearing of cloth mask in public places. So all these 4 things should be definitely carried forward. Apart from this, I would suggest that we all have a separate closet or for our wardrobe or for our shopping bags, apart from our usual regular home domestic wear or our houseware, so that these fomites do not spread in the event of such a thing taking place, such an outbreak taking place. It will always be better to remember that we need to become more responsible. Okay, so far we were just ordinary citizens. We need to transform ourselves into participatory citizens, because the health of our community is not alone with the government. Okay, does not rest alone with the healthcare workers. Please remember, don't Rely always on the healthcare workers. Healthcare workers are there to support you if you fall back or if your health deteriorates. But always remember that your healthcare is your priority. You need to become participatory citizens. Your healthcare is in your hands. If you be healthy, your family will be healthy. If your families are healthy, the entire street will be healthy. If entire street is healthy, the entire society will be healthy. And if the entire society is healthy, nation will be healthy. And if entire nations are healthy globally, this world will be healthy. So stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you all.